Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. We love some good time-saving tips, don't we, Rach?
We do.
And that's one of the things I love about Rounded. It's an accounting and invoicing system, and it automates expense tracking, connects to the bank accounts, and simplifies my BAS. It tidies everything up so much easier. And I think it helps you focus on the billable work by freeing up time.
Absolutely. I think the day that I moved from spreadsheets to Rounded was just like a huge game changer. I just used to spend hours on invoicing, expense tracking, the shoebox of receipts.
Yeah, I think we've all done that.
And Rounded is just so easy to use, and it really helps automate these tasks. So you can, invest your time in ways to build your business instead, like upskilling, client acquisition, relationship building, all the things.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you get 20% off your annual plan, and all the details are in the show notes. Hey, Rach, how are things?
Yes, very good. I think it's been a tricky couple of weeks with different client situations though, which is why I'm very interested in our discussion today. It's something all freelancers need to tune into.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a common problem, particularly of people who are just starting out freelancing on those first few years, because we're talking to Maggie Patterson from BS Free Business, love the name, and about how boundaries are a business strategy. And it's something you and I see freelancers struggle with a lot. It's a really big issue.
Yeah, I think it takes time to sort of learn how to set really strong boundaries when you work for yourself, sometimes years.
Yes.
So I'll introduce Maggie and we'll get started.
Great.
So Maggie Patterson is the creator of BS Free Business and the author of Staying Solo. With 20 years of experience as a successful entrepreneur in client services, Maggie helps service business owners build what she proudly calls a boring business, strategically small, sustainable, and designed to fit their lifestyle without the constant hustle. A podcaster and writer, Maggie is a vocal advocate for humane business practices rooted in respect, empathy, and trust. She also hosts 2 podcasts, Staying Solo and Confessions of a Micro Agency Owner. And she co-hosts the consumer advocacy podcast, Duped, the dark side of online business. Welcome, Maggie.
Welcome.
So everyone can see I have a podcast problem for starters. So. And when I'm not doing my own podcast, I like to be on everyone else's podcast. So yes, it's my preferred medium apparently.
Yeah, free podcast is really a commitment. I'm impressed.
Yeah, just one is enough for us, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so much to discuss after that bio. I love your no bullshit approach, and I would love to hear how your business and boundaries evolved. Are you a reformed pushover yourself?
I wouldn't say I'm a reform pushover, but when I started freelancing, I literally had a baby. I was like, I don't want to go back to my agency job. So I was doing a lot of things where I was just like happy to be getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all start off like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was really just excited by clients. And thankfully, because I had the agency background, I did have an understanding of like how those client relationships should function to some degree. And I tend to have a fairly strong personality. But at the same time, when your client relationships are tied to your income and you need to pay your bills, pushing back can be really, really challenging. And it's like, how do you do this in a way that's not going to damage the relationship? And how are you going to do this in a way that works for everybody? So it's not just you being seen as like saying no constantly to someone who's actually paying you for your services.
It's tricky. You've mentioned to us that you think freelancers often told to set boundaries. It's all that self-care stuff, which I've never been big. The self-care thing is a whole other story.
Yeah.
But that's not what it means. So talk us through that misconception.
Boundaries are really interesting because we often will think of it as like, well, I don't have I don't do this, or I don't offer this service. We think of it in these kind of abstract ways, or we think of it as like, oh, I need to take a vacation because, or I need to go get my nails done or whatever it is. When really boundaries are the foundation of a really healthy working relationship. You think about your personal relationships. You have boundaries in how you communicate with your partner, your family, your friends. Like my friends know, don't just call me because I'm not going to pick up. And if you do call me or text me and say it's urgent, I'm literally going to think someone is on their way to like another realm. So having those same boundaries with your clients is a really healthy way to define those rules of engagement. So when we think of boundaries, we often think of them as being bad, or we're not being, especially if you've been socialized or raised as a woman, you want to be, you're probably engaged in people pleasing, you have a hard time saying no to things. So really thinking about it, instead of it like, oh, I'm going to care for myself and making it indulgent, it is actually a really healthy way to set how you are going to work together so everyone gets what they need from the relationship.
Yeah.
Let's touch a bit more on that saying no thing, because I think that is a learning curve for lots of freelancers. And I personally am a work in progress on that one, even though I've been freelancing for over 25 years. So how can you shift how you think about boundaries if you're a chronic yes person?
Oh, and I will say, Rachel, I love that you brought up the fact that it is a work in progress. Even though I've been doing, I've been freelancing, running my own businesses for over 20 years, every so often something comes up and I'm like, oh, so this is not something we're going to try to strive for perfection with. We're going to try to strive for progress. And if you're someone who has challenges with saying no, I think a few things can really help. Number one, defining what those rules of engagement, those boundaries are with how you work from clients from the onset. Like have them in, like I literally write, these are office hours. We are closed these weeks of the year. You can expect response times around this. If you're going to add more to the scope, it'll be that. So including that in proposals, in contracts, in welcome packets, really making sure that people understand when they choose to work with you, that you're not going to be that person who's going to, have that quick turnaround the next day, or like they can call you that morning and be like, hey, can you write that 2,000 word, article for tomorrow? That's not how you're going to do your best work. And it's not in their best interest either. So setting them out from the onset is really, really important. The other thing I always have to remind people is that they are your boundaries and it's your job to maintain them and not break them. So one I see a lot of people I work with do is they will say, I only respond between 9 and 4. Well, next thing you know, they're sending an email at 11 p.m. And what have they just taught their client? They have now taught their client that they're working at 11 p.m. and that it's okay to, contact them outside of working hours. When we have this wonderful feature called send later in our email. Write the email when it works for you and schedule it for 8 a.m. the next morning or within business hours. So really being like, these are kind of the ways I need to work and sticking to them yourself and watching when you are slipping into that behavior. As for the no part, my little trick for this for years was I never said no. I would say, you know what? That's really interesting. So here's what I'm going to propose as an alternative.
Yeah.
I was in the business of alternatives. I didn't say no. I would say, you know what? That deadline is not actually going to result in a great end product, but what I can suggest instead and whatever would work for me better. And then it's seen as helpful, strategic, accommodating, not just me being like, yeah, no.
And that is easier. I think Rachel often talks about the yes and I quite like that. Yes, and I can get it to you here. Or yes, and I can, get back to you then. And so I'm not actually saying no. And
also, I think you can become better at saying, I'll get back to you on that, or I'll get back to you like in a couple of hours about that. And actually stepping away from the request and thinking about it and checking your schedule and all of that, it can stop you falling into those, black holes when you end up working weekends and all of that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned like taking some time. Because of the nature of communications and the access our clients have to us, we don't have to answer the email like that.
Yeah.
Like we don't set those expectations and don't do that to yourself. Just because you have your email open right now doesn't mean you have to respond to them in this minute. Go take the time you need to really think it through. The other thing is recognizing there are going to be at times, on occasion, where you do make an exception. And when you make an exception, being very clear with the client that this is an exception. This, it can't be a regular thing. And if you notice you're getting into a pattern with a client where you are constantly being asked to make exceptions, that's a great conversation with the client in a really like kind, helpful, thoughtful way to say, you know what? Listen, it seems like you have a lot of last minute requests. I want to be able to really accommodate you. Like, let's shift this so we can get these assignments to me sooner. How can we make this better? And I actually just had this conversation with a client last week, and I continue to have these conversations. I'm like, I'm seeing a lot of last minute requests from so-and-so on your team. Can we ensure that they include me on the first touch for the communications so this doesn't become an ongoing problem? It was just an ask and it solved the problem really quickly. So coming in and being like, how can we get creative so everyone's needs are being met and you're not in a position where you're constantly, running around at the last minute, because that's what creates resentment for a business. That's what creates needless stress. And we start to dislike those clients, even if they've been a really great client. You're just like, oh, I'm so over you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
The ad hoc client.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest mistakes people make around boundaries? And have there been some that you've made that taught you a good lesson?
Honestly, the biggest one I see people being is too available. Like if you have, let's say you have 3 writing clients and, one's like a bigger retainer, one's a medium retainer, one's like a smaller retainer. Why are you providing the smaller one with the same level of response time, flexibility, everything else that you're providing to that higher one? That tells me there's a problem there. So I think really looking at how do I set a service expectation based on all the conditions of how I want to work. And also, if you pay me more money or you're going to pay me a rush fee or something like that, all right, now we're talking. But providing for those things up front and stating like there may be a rush fee, there might be a late fee, there might be a delay fee, like having those things in there gives you a point of conversation with the client versus being like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier in the conversation, you were talking about how, sometimes we set boundaries because of things that happen in our business and it kind of motivates us. So what are some blunders that you see freelancers making and then they think, oh God, I really need to put that in my T&Cs or in my proposal or something like that? You just kind of start to build all those things in. But how could we sidestep having to do that?
Make the mistakes.
Yeah.
Honestly, for anyone who's doing creative work, limiting the number of revisions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, like with writing, I have a clause that's like, we are going to do an outline. You're going to approve the outline. After that, there's one review for substantive edits and there's one review for line edits. After that, you are going to have, it's now out of scope and that's a different fee.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at that. Looking at common scenarios that come up. Do you often have a lot of like legitimately urgent last minute things? Can that be a rush fee? One I see a ton with my clients, and I say this, I probably at least once a week with people. I'm like, do you have a rebooking or a delay fee in your contract? Because everyone starts a project with all the excitement in the world and then something derails it. And what happens to you is that doesn't impact the organization, but it impacts you and your schedule and your capacity and your availability. And you're like, wait a second, I have another project. And having something to say, like, if you've delayed this past Q1, I'm now rebooking for Q3 and that's going to cost you extra. All of a sudden, they often can resolve the situation. So a lot of times these things, these boundaries, these extra things you're stating out, they're actually just an incentive for the client to stick to what they've agreed to.
Yeah.
For me, I see boundaries as a really important way I've run my business. I mean, I think that because I've been doing this for a while, over 10 years, that I have set up boundaries. And I think it's quite personal too. It's what might stress me out may not stress Rachel out or whatever. So what sort of frameworks or processes should you set in place? Is it good to just sort of think about what stresses you out?
I absolutely think anything that stresses you out, causes you anxiety, makes you want to set your business on fire, those are red flags for you to absolutely ensure you have covered off. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I do not want my clients to phone me unexpectedly. So I have it. Hey, here's how the best way to communicate with me, and here's how to get a timely response.
Mm.
And because those random phone calls, I used to get them in my early days of freelancing, and I would be like, I get to the end of the day, and I'd be like, I haven't done anything. Now I got to do this tonight. Come
Mm.
on. So
Yeah.
looking for those first and foremost. And then the other thing is understanding that, especially if you work with corporate clients or bigger organizations, their work culture might not be aligned with how you work. So being very thoughtful about recognizing, like I've worked a lot with tech in my career. They work around the clock. They are quite frankly, it's pretty unhinged from my perspective. So I've had to be very upfront of like, hey, I work normal business hours. I don't work your tech hours, and really being clear with them of what's going to work. But I do think, Lynn, going to your point of whatever is stressing you out the most, that is a sign that it is something you need to be establishing a boundary around. And you do not have to be in this constant state of bracing for what's next coming in for a client. Like if email stresses you out, tell your clients, I check my email at 9 and 4. And then check your email at 9 and 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah, I think in your pitch you were talking to us about baking boundaries into your offers. And in Australia we sometimes call that packages or whatever. I think that's really interesting because we just had someone on the podcast, Nikita Morel, who's a copywriter for architects, and she has this thing called the pause clause. So if a project stops for any reason and they want to pick it up 3 months later or 6 months later, she charges them a fee to do that because then you've got
Yes.
to dig back into the research. And I thought that was just brilliant. So I have put that into my contracts. What are some other boundaries that you would recommend baking into your packages or your offers if you're a freelancer?
So, depending on the type of work you do, if you're doing writing, for example, with creative work, again, revisions,
Yep.
ownership, things like you can't come back to me 3 months later and ask for a revision. Like once we've received final approval, like it's over.
Yep.
And a big one I have seen is definitely the delays. The other thing I have written in at different contracts is approvals.
Yep.
Who is responsible for approvals in the like who is the ultimate approver for them?
Yep.
Because I refer to it as like an other voices clause, because especially with corporate clients, like sometimes my direct client is like the VP of marketing, but then all of a sudden the VP of strategy is involved and someone from product management, and it's like I don't know who my actual client is in that situation. So being clear on, in complex situations, who the actual approver is can make a huge difference.
See, that's interesting because I'm quite different. I almost all my work is for corporates, and I don't mind that because I find it less personal. I don't work for small businesses because it is personal and they keep changing their mind and everything. And I find that really stressful. If it's just the legal department or the product department, I go, sure, I'll do that because I don't take it as personally. Yeah. And also, I charge them a lot more money.
What about
Yes,
though
and I think
if you get the Google Doc and it's got all the stakeholder comments and then there are more coming the next day and more coming the next day? Like that is the kind of thing where you're like, how can I set a boundary around that? And like it's like all comments need to come at the same time, or I guess.
Rachel, that is one of the most stressful things. You keep
Yeah.
going in the document, you're like, well, so and so said they did it. Well, what
Yeah.
about this one?
And
What
they're
about this?
arguing in the comments.
Yes. And that is, I love that Lynn said, like, I don't mind if it goes to legal. Great. I don't mind if it goes to legal either because I'm not fighting with legal. But then product and marketing and strategy are having an argument. And I'm
Yeah.
like, figure it out. So one thing I've done with the commenting thing is basically whoever my point of contact is, they're responsible for communicating to me and my team, like to say, hey, you know what? Now you're ready to review. And if
Yeah.
there's things that I'm looking at and there's conflict, it's going back to them to, I'm like, literally, you all need to go get on the same page because this is not a decision that me as the writer
Yeah.
can make for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a boundary in itself, really,
Yes.
Yeah, it's back in your court sort of thing.
So one of the things that I guess you're talking about is there's a lot here about onboarding. So when you're onboarding a new client or, expanding scope or anything, you need to bake some of this into your processes. Do you have a process? Is it all about contracts or is it about the workflow?
It is like literally, like I said earlier, there it is in the proposal, then it is in the contract, and then it's also in a welcome document that I'm sending them right
Mm,
before our kickoff meeting. And in that kickoff meeting, I literally will say, like, did you look at the welcome document? You
mm,
know, do you have any specific questions? This is so we'll work well together. And I do like to say to them, is there anything I should know about working with you?
Mm,
mm.
Like, and sometimes I'll find out, oh, so and so on their team can, you know, be particular about Oxford comma usage, or it might be the
Yes.
most random thing, but it's something that's going to make my life easier. And then they feel really heard. And then
Mm,
the other thing is, too, is understanding that, you know, when you work with clients for a really long time,
mm,
sometimes you need to bake in points where we're like, we're going to have a conversation about how we're working together. And that's going to include resetting or reestablishing or setting even new boundaries.
mm, mm,
I have had one client for 6+ years. I've been the constant on the marketing team in a lot of ways, and their team has changed. So there's constantly being that resetting process with them. And don't be afraid to have those conversations with your clients, because
mm,
one of the things I definitely know I struggled with is I felt like I was in service. So I would not feel comfortable going to them directly and saying, you know what, like, hey, this isn't working. We're both feeling frustrated here. Whereas a client really appreciates when you do that, because so
mm.
many service providers are unwilling to do that. And that
Yeah.
says to them, I really value you and the relationship we have. How can we make this better for everybody involved?
Mm, mm,
mm. I suppose it's also really different if you are stuck in that order taker role and you move to a strategic kind of advisor type role,
Yes.
or yeah. So it's very different boundaries, isn't it?
mm,
Because you don't have a lot of power in the other role, but suddenly you're giving them ideas and helping them,
mm,
come up with strategy.
mm.
Yeah, and I think this is where, going back to the question around the where how are you baking them into packages,
Yeah.
being really clear on, especially with things that can feel very squishy, like strategy.
Yeah.
Like
Mm,
if we're doing let's say a content strategy,
mm,
or we're doing some sort of communication strategy, what does that look like? What are the deliverables? How many calls are we going to have? What is the
Mm,
process we're going to go through? Communicating all of that
mm,
really helps you push back when they're like, can we just have one more call? And you're like, we've had 10 calls and go out
mm,
nowhere.
mm,
Like,
mm,
this strategy is going nowhere fast. Or, you know, really being able to identify, like, okay, you know what? We need to have calls with these 3 people, and anything else is going to be out of scope.
mm. It's interesting because I think that some freelancers, like you end up getting PTSD after really bad or, projects that have blown
Oh,
out or whatever. You just want to leave it all behind when actually you should probably sit down and go, right, what worked there and what didn't, and outline all the steps, and then that's how you start to create boundaries for future projects, I suppose. You actually have to do that debrief in your own business.
yes. And I think anytime you have something that has gone off the rails,
Mm,
being willing to unpack it is critical. And my lawyer, who's I've worked with for years, she always knows when I pop up and I'm like, could we put a clause for this in the contract? She's like, what happened?
mm.
mm,
And over
Yeah.
the years, that's been less and less and less. Like, but there's sometimes scenarios you could never dream of with a client that are going to come up. So
mm,
being willing to unpack that and understand, what was my role in that? Where was I unclear? Where did I not communicate this well? And how can I ensure that I'm able to avoid that situation in the future, or at least have tools at my disposal to kind of reshape what the direction things are going in. So not just blaming it on the client or blaming it on yourself, being like, where is the shared responsibility? And then figuring out how to avoid that in the future is really important. And
mm,
sometimes that's going to be an update to your welcome package. Sometimes it's going to be fine tuning what goes in a package, really
Mm.
looking at where are those possibilities where I can, very strategically and thoughtfully kind of shore up how I want to be working and the type of work I'm doing.
mm,
I do
mm,
think it is good to pull yourself back, because sometimes you know what you're offering, you know what you can, but it's not always clear to somebody who's a new client or everything, because it's often really quite clear in your
Yes.
head. I mean, I had a recent wonderful experience where I had a project derail for something that was external to both me and the client. And the client just came back to me and said, we're not going to go for this, but because of this reason, but we're going to pay you. anyway for the first one. And I thought, how nice is that? And also now I think because they offered to do that, if that ever happened in a real thing, I'm much more inclined to say, that's fine, this happens, but I think I need to invoice you now for that first one because I set up my schedule. And that was actually a positive thing from a client. It's not always a negative thing.
Mm,
And I
mm,
love that you use that example, Lynn, because a great client, the clients we want to work with, that we want to work with for years, they're going to be looking out for you as much as you're looking out for them. So, and that says a lot about the relationship. So, having a client that understands your time is valuable, that they are paying for it, and that, this is a business relationship and there's that respect and trust there, that is worth its weight in gold. And I would rather have 4 clients like that than a million clients who are a nightmare.
mm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's so true. I know you're very big on creating businesses that work for you. And something that freelancers might struggle with is structuring their schedule. Like they can have days that, fritter off into all different directions. You feel like you've got nothing done. So how can you lose control of your own schedule and then actually rein it in and make sure it's working for you long term?
Yeah, this is something I write a lot about in my book, Staying Solo, because this is like literally, I feel like 80% of my clients have shown up and they're just like, it's chaos. It is
Yeah.
chaos. I'm really good at what I do. I'm getting paid really well, but I don't feel like I have control of my day and my calendar. So
Yeah.
things like, when am I communicating with clients? When am I working on client deliverables? And I know when you're a creative, it can be like, but I'm not inspired. You can still set some structures in place and understand, like, you know what? I'm not really going to be feeling like doing client meetings on Monday. My brain's not there. So, really mapping things to how you like to work, the type of schedule, the best ways you're going to communicate. For me, I do my best writing in the evening. So,
Mm,
if I know I'm going to be doing a big writing project, I might not start work until 1 p.m. that day
mm,
because I know that between like 6 and 10, that's when all the creative magic is going to show up. So
mm,
being flexible, but also having some guardrails for yourself so that it feels like you are making meaningful progress. And also understanding that not every hour of every single minute of every workday needs to be consumed with client work. There needs to be time for you to, charge yourself up creatively, to do research on your industry, to do your marketing, to do your operations work. So, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to work 30 hours a week." And then every 30 hours, every minute is dedicated to their clients. So,
mm.
really looking at how can I do this in a way that's going to work better for me? And maybe you're going to do 20 hours of client work and 10 hours of working on your own business.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because in one of my businesses, Rachel's List, I've got a VA and she has a work on her business day on Wednesday. So she's not with me on that day. And
Yeah.
I used to think, oh, that's a bit annoying. Okay, I have to be the VA on Wednesdays. But now I just think it's such a smart thing that she does. She dedicates that whole day to things like what do I need to put in my contracts because that project went awry or what do I need to work on in terms of my marketing that I often forget to do or whatever. And I don't do that. I feel like my week is structured well with the podcast, Lynn. We structure it so that we are only really recording on Monday to Wednesday
Yeah.
because for reasons that for both of us we can't really record on Thursdays and Fridays, so we have that structure in place. But I'm starting to think more about ways that I can structure my calendar better. And I've been freelancing for 25 years. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is it's going to change over time. Like when
Yeah.
I had little kids, like I was at my desk at 9 a.m. My son's in university now, so I don't have to wrangle anybody out of the house and try to get them to put on pants. So well,
Yeah.
I have the flexibility to be like, you know what, I'm going to go for a long bike ride or I'm going to the pool. And
Yeah.
I schedule my days so most of my calls are in the afternoon and I'm not starting off early. So I
Yeah.
think but in a different season, that's going to change. And I think part of that is what are there going to be those ebbs and flows based on what you need personally, what's going on in your life, how your energy is, all those factors. And
Yeah.
being constantly like in a state of inquiry to be like, interesting, this isn't working for me the way it used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that people forget. Like, as a freelancer, it's your business. You make it
Yeah.
work for
Yes.
you and how it is. Because I'm the opposite, because I start work at 7 And
Oh,
I
bless
do.
you.
I
So
know.
I get up and do Pilates at 6, and then I start work at 7, and that's important to me. But I don't do much after 3 or 4 in the afternoon because I'm done. Yeah.
Mm,
Hmm.
Yeah,
mm,
and I think that makes my life a lot easier. When I used to get into the office when I had an office job early, and nobody would notice because nobody else did. But
Yeah.
then everyone would notice when I left at 4 or 5. And
mm,
so now I love the fact that I'm not answerable to anyone. It's just
mm,
me.
mm.
Mm.
Yes.
And Rachel, the thing you said about your VA taking that day off, this was one of the most mind-blowing things someone said to me about 10 years ago. I was like, what do you mean? I can do that? And
Mm,
what she said to me at the time, and I was like, life-changing. She's like, you
mm.
don't have to tell everybody that's what you're doing. You build your schedule
Yeah.
around that, and like, you don't have to announce it to the world. Now,
Mm,
when I moved to a 4-day work week 3 or 4 years ago, I did announce it to the world, and
mm,
every single one of my clients was like, oh, that's amazing. I wish I was
mm.
self-employed.
She does announce it to everybody because
Ah,
it's a set day and there is
Yeah.
no client work happening that day and it's really this dedicated it's actually made me think I need to do that. I need to have a
Yes.
dedicated work on the business day, which I don't have. Yeah.
all right. But I don't tell anybody. I do a lot of work because I travel to Perth a lot, which is a 2 to 3 hour time difference, and nobody
Mm-hmm.
knows that I'm there. I just, yeah, it's just there. It's nobody's
Mm.
business, and I just do it. I just adapt, and
Work as
they don't
normal.
work as normal. Nobody
Yeah.
needs to know where I am. I quite like that.
Mm.
But I love one of the things about a lot of your comms is about having a boring business. And I love a boring, well, I love it when business is boring and it just works. Is that
Yeah.
what you mean? Or what does it look like in practice?
Yes, I mean boring, not like you're bored. I mean boring, like predictable
Mm,
and profitable and quite frankly peaceful because so much where
Yeah.
I see so many freelancers struggling is
mm,
it's around things like boundaries that are fixable, but this is what sends them back into the arms of a corporate job they don't really want because they weren't able to figure this out. So, how can we create a business that is like not got drama? We can show up, we can do work we can enjoy with people we enjoy, make a living, and like have the space to do the things we plan to do when we started the business. And so much of what we see out there when it comes to starting a business is very, I call it like the entrepreneurial prosperity gospel. It's about making a gajillion dollars and being on the beach. And that's not actually the reality for most people. The reality is most people are like, hey, I replaced my salary. I work less. I don't have to commute. I can go do what I want to do. And if I want to go kayaking at 3 o'clock, I can. And
mm,
that
Mm.
is a really wonderful place to be. And I want people to be able to take advantage of that.
mm,
Mm. Mm.
mm.
What do you mean? Because you also talk on your website about how we can easily overcomplicate our businesses. What do you mean by that? And, how do you move to more of a simplifying phase?
Ooh, this is such a good one. So many people, what happens is two things is they're freelancing and they end up having way too many offers because they're trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Like if you know I'm a writer and I'm amazing at long form white papers and research papers, do that.
Mm.
You don't have to have 14 different packages for everybody. Like narrow that focus so you can be really good at something you actually enjoy and you don't have to add all the things. I know it's very popular to add, all the bells and whistles, but ultimately at the end of the day, like my agency was built on a few very specific pieces, blogs, case studies, white papers.
Hmm.
Not exciting. We don't do social content. We don't do much else, but that is the bread and butter of it. The other thing a lot of freelancers fall into is romanticizing different business models like digital products, becoming a coach, big group programs. And what people don't realize is the people who are teaching you to do those things are selling you products for those. So they make it sound really, really, really easy. And I'm not saying it's not a terrible thing. Like, I have been able to make that pivot very slowly over 10 years to doing more and more of that. But it has taken a lot of marketing, a lot of effort, a lot of skill, and a lot of patience. So I think if you're like, oh, I'm just going to like drop this digital product and get rich, no one's talking about the realities of building that type of audience and
No.
how, if you're selling a $47 product, it doesn't add up the same way as a big corporate retainer does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Mm.
so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have some like favorite sort of must-have systems to sort of get more strategic, sustainable businesses?
Yeah, so there's a few things I absolutely love is number one, having a really robust onboarding process. So
Mm,
thinking through that first 90 to 100 days for a client. And this is
mhm,
much easier to do when you have a very small number. You're like, I specialize in white papers and research papers. What does my process look like? Really help the client envision how you're working together to reduce the what about factor,
mm,
right? Like,
mm.
because last thing, nobody likes their client coming to them and going, well, what about this? And what about that? Make them feel safe and secure and be as communicative and supportive and helpful as you were in the sales process. Because I feel like where a lot of people, they're great on the sales side. And then once people get in, the experience doesn't match. So you want to make sure that first 90 to 100 days for your client is really great. And then past that, having a regular cadence to your communications for each client. When am I sending reports? When am I sending invoices? When am I checking in on things? When do we have calls? The more predictable that is, the more your client is going to trust you. And a
Mhm.
Yeah.
lot of people struggle with it being predictable because it feels boring. But if you want less drama, that's the way
Mhm.
to do it. Be like clockwork. Do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it as much as you can. And I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, set that up in a way that's going to work for you.
Mm.
But like knowing, like, hey, I meet with the client every second Wednesday, I send the report on the third business day of the month, like that level of predictability helps you stand out with your clients and also is a great way to get repeat clients and also ongoing work or scope expansion because you're the person they can trust in a stable of other freelancers that maybe aren't that great.
Yeah.
Mm. That was going to be one of my questions, actually. Like, if you design the right business and you have those systems in place and you dedicate time to doing the onboarding that covers the first 90 days and all of that, have you found for you that does lead to you attracting better clients and being able to charge more because all those bits are in place and you're not flying by the seat of your pants all the time?
Yes. Because what happens when a client feels really safe and secure and the project goes smoothly, there wasn't any hiccups, they trust you, you're now getting follow-on business. They're referring you to their other people, other departments, other, friends they have in the industry. So, when we talk about a business built on referrals, we're thinking of that referral like from a marketing point of view, but how are we doing that with the client experience and the end result we're delivering to clients so that they're willing to do a case study, they're willing to do a testimonial.
Yeah.
They will sing your praises to anyone who will listen. They're the person when someone says on LinkedIn, oh, I'm looking for this, they're tagging you in. They're
Mm.
being your champion and your advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your sales, your unpaid sales team.
Mm.
Exactly, because as a freelancer, you don't have a lot of time, energy, and resources for marketing. So
Yeah.
do a really good job with your client work so that it can work for you on the back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Mm.
We often like it's been, I mean, obviously you're in Ottawa in Canada, so it might be
Mhm.
different there, but it has been a tough couple of years. I mean, I think here in Australia and probably in Canada, it's been a bit easier than if you're in the States. But what's working for you in bringing in work and new clients?
It's always, I mean, I will say it's a few things. It's always been referrals
Mm.
and
Hmm.
recommendations. Like that has been as long as I've been doing work,
Yeah.
that has always been my bread and butter. The other thing that's kind of interesting, and I've been talking a lot about this lately, is, it has been a really challenging year for most people, especially in the US. But we have to recognize that with these geopolitical things going
Mm.
on, which we all know, we don't need to get in the nuts and bolts of that, but with all of that going on, people have like the people we work with are probably have less capacity. They're concerned about budgets. There's something they're calling a trust recession going on. So people, are slower to act. So how can you look at your business and be like, okay, I know these factors are here. How do I adapt what I'm doing? Maybe I need to build some trust up front. So instead of getting into a big retainer with a client, I'm going to have a quick win, short term, 30-day offer we can do with them so they really start to trust me. So ensuring that there's like you're making these small resets in your business, sometimes with clients, I see a lot of times it's positioning. They've always been driven by referrals, and they've always been driven by these recommendations, and maybe that's not happening as fast. So they need to do a better job with the ones that are coming in of gaining their trust. So like, are you positioned correctly? Are you articulating your expertise? Do they understand the process? Do you have testimonials? Do you have case studies? Like things that seem really, really basic, but when you're busy, they totally get overlooked. And now they really, really matter. Like your credibility and your ability to be, really get their trust from the second they hit your website or they check you out on social media is more critical than ever.
That's so true. Well, something we do ask all our guests about is their favorite tools or apps or services. What would you be lost without in your work?
I'm a big Notion person.
We hear that all the time.
Notion is
neither of us use it.
No, but it's one of the most common tools that people mention. Yeah.
It's not super exciting for a lot of people, but it's worked really well for us within my agency, building a knowledge base. It works really well. I have ADHD, so it's really been a great way to organize my brain with novelty, because sometimes I need a board and sometimes I need a list. And so I'm able to adapt that. I will always say Notion. I love my Notion. My project management system is not that exciting. It's just, that's the one I always come back to.
Amazing.
Wow. And so interesting. I think we're all going to go out and be better at our onboarding and set all the boundaries. Yes. Well, I must say that you talked a bit about scheduling emails. I do that a lot. Sometimes I just, whenever, and also because, as I said, I start really early. So I don't tend to send emails at 7 a.m. I tend to send them at 8 or 9 when people are in the office, because otherwise I could be a bit scary. So yes, I think the scheduling emails is one of my favorite tools. So tell us where audiences can find you, Maggie.
You can find me at all my podcasts.
Yes, we'll put links to those.
So probably the best podcast for freelancers is the Staying Solo podcast, where I talk a lot about boundaries and resetting your business and all the things we covered today. My book, Staying Solo, is available all the places. It's available in Australia too. It has made its way down under. And I actually have a follow-on workshop about boundaries that would be great for your audience. And they can check that out at bsfreebusiness.com/bite.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Amazing. Maggie, thank you very much for coming on. It's just been such a fascinating chat. It's definitely got the wheels turning in my brain. I'm taking notes.
Rachel's like, what day am I taking off?
Yes. I'm edging towards that business day. Once a week. But that brings us to the end of the show this week. Thank you for everyone who's listening, and we will put all the information about Maggie, how you can connect with her, find the workshop and her podcast, her many podcasts, way more than us. We'll put that in the show notes in the podcast app, and we will see you all next week.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's list, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.